Okay, hello everyone. I'm Gabriel from Vienna Design Week, and I'm welcoming everyone to this talk about on the topic of our new festival headquarters. When at Vienna Design Week, for the last couple of years, we've always had digital topics that we featured in our festival. In 2018, that was virtual and augmented reality. In 2018, that was game design. And over the years, we built, a network of collaborators, both in Austria and internationally, that we like to speak to when it's we want to do something in the digital world. And so when the pandemic hit us and everyone around us, and we weren't sure how and in which channels and formats and media we would be able to follow through with Vienna Design Week, one thing was clear, that the digital and virtual media wasn't for us a symptom of Corona, but rather something that we were going to do anyway. But the pandemic, of course, and its repercussions internationally and in Austria were a good opportunity to launch new formats in the festival that could, we could use to communicate our content, but also formats to create new content. At the festival, we're deeply convinced that the digital media is not only a replacement and a way to push physical formats into the digital space, but that there should be genuine digital content in the digital media. And so one thing that I, as the responsible project manager at Vienna Design Week, but also we as a festival as a whole are particularly proud of, is that we were able to come up with a virtual festival headquarters, which is not a copy of the physical festival headquarters in the virtual world, but a thing of its own. And it's been received very well by our audience, and it's filled with a lot of fascinating program. And we would have never been able to do that if it weren't for a group of very dedicated, enthusiastic, and knowledgeable people that we convened as a working group, as a Arbeitsgruppe, as we like to say in German. And now I'd like to introduce that group to you and then invite them all to join the talk and also introduce their collaborators in turn. So, I hope you excuse me for just doing a random order. It's not in order of precedence that now I name my collaborators. So on the one hand, and all of them are returning collaborators. So we've had them at the festival before, and so yeah. On the one hand, we have Martina Menigon, who's an artist and a lecturer at the University of Angewandte Kunst. She was present at the virtual reality showcase in 2018 with a great piece of work, and has now returned and opened up for us the world of Mozilla Hubs, and sent us on a journey through that medium. Hello, Martina.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Then we have Wilhelm Cherubil, who is an architect and artist in Vienna. With his collective, Tab Collective, he has received the Outstanding Arts Award, handed over in the framework of Vienna Design Week in 2016. He was responsible for modeling a lot of the hubs and also commissioning some of the great work at Vienna Design Week's virtual festival headquarters this year. Hi. Then Paul of Soundframe, and also newly formed area for virtual art. Only a couple of days ago, they launched their platform, which I hope you've all seen already. If not, do it after we finished our talk, or if you have a second screen, try it there. It's big suggestions that you do so. They have curated and formed their own curated space for immersive and multimedia, multidimensional art as part of Vienna Design Week's virtual festival headquarters. Hello.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hello.
Oh, there's Wilhelm as well.
Yeah. I was like, we had some issues with the audio on the Twitch, so I was a bit distracted. So.
Yeah, this just to let all of you know, this talk is being streamed on multiple channels. We on Vienna Design Week's Facebook page, you can watch it. Some of you are watching it. Then it's also streamed on Twitch, which means it's also being shown in our virtual festival headquarters in the purpose-built streaming stage, and it's also being shown in Vienna Design Week's physical festival headquarters behind me. So people are joining us from multiple locations. Yes, I'm almost done. The last thing I want to say, was a pleasure to work with all of you, and it's been a great process being able to bring all these different and new things to our audience. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and it was worth it for you. And yeah, I'll hand over the word to you. Whoever's first.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Gabriel. It's a pleasure working together again. And yeah, maybe, I don't know, as the three of us, we discussed really a lot how the virtual helps us building new spaces. And I think like both of you, Martina and Wilhelm, you did a super brilliant, great job. And what like really fascinated me the most was that so many new artworks and spaces were created during the last weeks. So yeah, I really like the feeling of getting space back, or getting the possibility to show artworks, to gain visibility and to meet each other. Yeah, so I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think it was really great to see this kind of, I always say like the Design Week metaverse somehow that has been created by, constantly adding all these Mozilla Hubs rooms. And how they all came together, and how different all of them are, but somehow still compact within the festival. I mean, it has been super interesting, at least on my side, to design a new space that would fit with our visual art style, but also would recall the Design Week image, and also to create spaces with the artists. So really have this close collaboration with artists in developing their spaces. I think this was the most exciting part of making this virtual festival headquarters. And I mean, I don't know, when it opened, it was amazing to see all the spaces, all the people being there and being able to be together in the virtual.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it was I'm probably the one that works for the shortest time in this like Mozilla Hubs thing, but now I'm already super hooked, I guess. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Like I never used it beforehand. So, and yeah, it was super. Also, like Martina already said, like when we had the whole thing, in the end, it was quite surprising how different, but how similar the things are, but how everybody uses it like in a different way. And yeah, I'm super happy with the outcome actually. So.
It almost felt like, you know, when we started working, we weren't quite sure how many things there were that could be done. And as we continued to work, more and more things popped up that we could do. And that was really kind of pleasant, you know, briefing creep, as, you know, so sort of more and more things were added, and the whole thing grew. I wasn't quite sure when we started how it would turn out and how big it would actually end up being.
I guess no one really was. But that was the nice thing, like whenever like more and more got added, that was super nice. Sorry, I think there's some delay somewhere.
Yeah. But I think that we hear you, Wilhelm, quite well.
Yes.
Yeah, I was also surprised that at the end what the amount of works was, and like also like things popped up there, and then the videos and everything came together quite well, which I in the beginning didn't expect it to be that huge. Like, I guess it's in size quite similar to the actual headquarters, or even bigger than the actual headquarters is. So that's a nice addition to the whole thing. And also with the events that were shared in the one space by the guys that I invited, that was super nice, like having all these different layers and like things that now created a whole metaverse of its own, or a whole universe of its own. So that, yeah, super nice.
Yeah, I guess if you talk about it time-wise, the time that you can spend in the physical headquarters and or that the usual visitor spends in the physical as well in the virtual headquarters is quite similar. At least, you know, there are some people who don't get either of it, I guess, and some people who would spend more time in the physical, and others would spend more time in the virtual, and you can get really lost, I say, in both iterations of Vienna.
I think it was really interesting when we were like talking about the overall like Mozilla Hubs, but also for our area for virtual art, and then for the for this iteration that we created for the design week, how in the end this virtual space that you create in Hubs is so close to the actual physicality of an exhibition. So when you have an exhibition, you have a defined room. You cannot have thousands of people coming in this one room. You have to check, you know, the room capacity. You need to have tours, and it needs to make sense for the people not to get too lost, but also it's nice if they get a bit lost. And it was really nice to see how you can get completely creative in the virtual, like having a totally abstract, never seen before space that you can experience, yet it is still real. So it has still real issues or real similarities with the physical space. And this for me is what, it's the most fascinating part of Mozilla Hubs. You have I don't know, a room that is completely colorful with shapes that you will never be able to experience in the physical reality, yet you meet people, you talk with people, you cannot be too many, because so it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's also interesting how different space is being used, like in the virtual. Like as you said, there are those like rooms packed with colors and sounds and objects and stuff. Then you have super clean rooms. You can just, there's a lot of fog you need to discover, and you need to find out yourself. And some are even a bit creepy. The others are super happy and nice. So I have the feeling that it's a very nice tool to really create immersion, and it's a very emotional space also, because you can trigger the different senses in a very special way. So that's quite interesting. And
agree.
I thought it was quite interesting in our process, as well as also experiencing the other creators who contributed spaces and objects that you know, often you do need a certain relation to the physical world in order to create your space. There were only a couple who went completely abstract. So Wilhelm, when he created the main hub, he took the floor plan of our physical headquarters, as did other, for instance, Nadia Zerunian and Anna Zimmermann. They also took their physical room here in the physical headquarters as a starting point for their very, they did a step of abstraction, but in the end, the starting point, like this first step, was something physical. And in the end, Martina, when you created your exhibition room, the starting point was the graphic that we print on the physical posters we print on our stickers, and now it found a very, very different twist in the virtual. It is very hard to, the blank page to, be able to do anything really in hubs is kind of like a challenge for a designer, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Personally, I work a lot with the virtual, so meanwhile it gets easier, but it's still, I still work with things that are from reality. And I think for Wilhelm, for you was the same, or it was a very similar process to just take some elements from reality and then just find the place for them within the virtual and transform them in the virtual afterwards. And I think more or less it's a different process, of course, is Wilhelm's process, but that's also what happens with the lobby, starting from the plan and then kind of getting crazy with the possibility of the virtual, but still having hints on the physical exhibition, on the physical festival.
Yeah, I think it's also quite nice with most of the guys I invited, they have at least like this one thing that's somewhere related to something real. Like the ones from Center for Spatial Technology have the actual space their office is in recreated in Hub. So like that's quite nice. They located their office into the virtual space in a way. Then, for example, with iHeartBlob, it's just like this reference to an old architectural project and those things. So it's quite nice for all my contributors. They somehow had in relation to the reality. That was quite nice. I thought of it before, but in the end, all of them implemented it in some way. So yeah.
Because I think that, I imagine for someone who knows nothing
Gabriel, I think your connection is really bad.
He doesn't get
nice
it.
It's a very nice sound.
Yeah, it was a very sound piece suddenly happening.
Yeah.
A couple of cliches or stereotypes about virtual reality would be in this completely abstract. Is it more performance? No? Can you hear me?
It's more performance.
No.
To say that, yeah.
You could try to write your statement though in the chat at least, we could react to that.
And now it's moving again.
Now it's better maybe. Or if you turn off the camera.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Has it come back?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about the our weird internet. So yeah, no. What I was about to say is. It's interesting that a lot of people, what people would imagine a virtual reality to be like, if they don't know much about it and haven't been in spaces that much. So that it's not so sci-fi as a lot of people might imagine it to be. It's much more, people bringing something from their work in the real reality into the virtual reality, or trying to talk about topics that are very much from this world. It's just another tool and another medium for people to express what they would want to express in other media as well.
Yeah, so I think I was just, I forgot where I read this, so I'm sorry if I don't quote the right person, but I was reading about this, this needs of, having always a little bit of the physical within the virtual, like even if in the most abstract place, you might be visiting or you might be creating, there is always a little hint where there is a floor where you enter, there is a floor where you stand, or I don't know, there is certain abstraction that can recall a sky or something like this. So it seems to be something important to always add in the virtual. It can be just a little thing, like really the entrance to the space or a text that you read. And that's a bit also in our area for virtual art. It's completely organic and abstract, the avatars, the shapes, yet it's a shape that allows you to walk on. You can also fly, of course, but the first impression is you enter and you are in the space, you're walking in the space. And it's like our little hint on the reality, I guess, that we have. But I also like the combination of also avatars, like in Mozilla Hubs, you have people, you have bodies, you can see. And this is extremely important in a social VR space like Mozilla Hubs to be able to see the others and connect, yet you can be super abstract.
Absolutely.
And this is super nice.
What I did really like, we tried to have this live show happening in one of our spaces, and we also have a live screen in that space here for Vienna Design Week. But what we did was have a virtual radio show that we projected to our wall, and it felt a bit like a festival wall. And avatars and people would start dancing and enjoy the live music, and I really liked that, and it happened very naturally. And so you see that it doesn't matter so much how you look like, how the world looks like, but it's very much about that social kind of someone starts moving around and the other one would copy and do her own stuff. So it was really this interaction kind of thing, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
We were sweating, actually. We were physically sweating while just moving our fingers on the keyboard, because it was just so exciting, this moment of social dancing together in front of a radio show in the virtual. It was immensely gratifying to be there with people and just have this fun, relieving moment. And I think that's also the thing, like that, this fear of the virtual, taking over the physical reality. I don't see this in that way. It's like they are going together. They are parallel realities. There is not one or the other. They're both. Yeah. And it's so nice when you can manage to accept this and know this and go into the virtual as well as going into the physical. And have this moment of I think, as you say before, this social interaction, emotions, that's a very important part to have in a virtual space for that to click, especially.
I think but what for us was a big challenge in creating not the spaces but the spaces here, the physical spaces in the physical festival headquarters, was to create this portal, or to create this bridge from the physical space into the virtual space. And there are technical difficulties. We've got a good connection now. We've got a computer that for people who might not try that at home, but a lot of people actually are like, no, I don't want to do it here. I'll try that at home. There's this willingness to bring a part of the festival to your own private space, I think, which is quite nice. But also the artwork in the window and how the space is designed, I think and it's true for a lot of VR art as well, that it is so important that you have this anchor in the physical exhibition space. If you want people to experience something, if you want people to step through that portal, I think that can't be overestimated, really.
I think creating the right surrounding for an immersive experience is extremely important. If you are sitting at home and you have, I don't know, someone talking next, the reality would be so much more present than if you are, let's say, in a silent exhibition space. I think this is not something, yeah, it's something to take in account. So of course, it's amazing that you can, you know, enter Mozilla Hubs with your computer or even with your phone. But of course, if you can experience it in VR, that's like the best way of experiencing it. And it should, like, if you have access, of course, do that. And if you don't, then amazing, you can enter with the computer and the phone, and all you need is, yeah, the device and the internet.
Yeah, but I think it's also quite nice with the VR goggle, because we were talking about the dancing when they were doing these live events. A lot of people actually were there with VR goggles, and then you get like these little hands on your avatar, and like people were really like dancing around and moving around. And I think also like this movement gets a lot different if you have like at least the space that is tracked and you just move around in the space for events and stuff like that. That was quite interesting. But then I think also like, because we were talking about this physicality before, a lot of people really have issues in the beginning when they join the first time, even to just walk in normal spaces, or if you're on the phone and like those things. So I guess that's also one relevant part that has to be taken into account for the first time users, how they, or if they can move in that space, or how they can move in that space. And that's one thing that I never experienced before, that it was quite hard to like just get people from one place to the other that were never in Mozilla Hubs, for example, or never played computer games, because for those who have this relation to how to walk around in virtual spaces, it's much easier. And also with the tour, for me, like at some point people just got lost because they couldn't, or they didn't switch early enough or switch too late the spaces. And then at the end it was just like, yeah, where is everybody? And but it's also nice, like that's the thing. I think what I like about the virtual space is that it's not that serious. Like in a way you have a bit of anonymity. At least there you can choose to be total, have a pseudonym, or you can have your name. And yeah, it's like this thing where, as I mentioned before, in a white cube you would never like talk or stuff like that, but there it's like a bit more less serious. So that's really nice about these virtual spaces, I think.
Yes.
Definitely has its own rules.
Yes. It's like you're born in, it's like you're literally born in the new reality, and you need to learn how to walk. Yeah. But maybe talking about this, we could start introducing some of the artists that are here with us today.
Would be nice.
Gabriel?
Yeah.
I thought you said something. Oh, okay, cool.
No, it's already like we should stay on time. I would have had another question, but maybe we can bring that into into Wilhelm's introduction. So that's
super.
Nice.
Perfect.
So I will.
So thank you.
I will leave.
See you later.
See you later.
And I will introduce one of the artists that we work together with, Aloe Vera. Welcome.
Yes, hello.
Coming to our little stage here.
I'm just gonna get myself orientated. Yes, hello, thank you for having me.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, indeed, this is so exciting.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I'm thrilled that we're working together again. So yeah, we have been knowing each other for several years now. I think we worked together at Soundframe Festival 6-7 years. Yeah, and yeah, always great. So let me introduce you.
Sure.
Ayo is born in Nigeria and was raised in Vienna, and is active as a musician and actor. He attended the Rose Bruford Drama School in London and subsequently worked both in front of the camera and on stage. He is also highly active in various causes, particularly human rights and youth advocacy. And as a percussionist and a live musician, Ayo has held audiences at the United Nations, the Commonwealth Nations, and various other organizations, and can be frequently found performing in various clubs across Europe, hopefully soon again.
Fingers crossed.
His unique style of drumming is influenced by West African roots, and that is enabling him to bridge the gap between the African and the European cultures in his performances. So for our exhibition at the Vienna Design Week, you created a Mozilla Hub space, and it's an absolutely great space. So everyone is invited, of course, to have a look at it, to watch it, and to wander through it. And as a start, I would love you to tell us a little bit more about the artwork.
Of course. Well, first of all, Eva, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And yes, and this makes it a special occasion to be here with you because of also our friendship outside this project. Well, before we get into it, I would just like to thank certain people who were instrumental in getting this. You yourself, I know you wouldn't give yourself that credit, but it's great that in 2020, you are able to think outside the box and utilizes how can we use technology and what we have to our disposal to expand so that people can continue to work, you know. So, and the people who were responsible for this project, Eva, of course, and I also like to thank Martina for her technological skills. I wouldn't have been able to manage all those technical details, so thank you. So, and of course, Angie. So all these people, they're all women, you're all women, and I really enjoyed working with you. And I think in a field that is male, white driven, it's refreshing. In terms of your question, how did this came apart? Well, basically, Alkebulan is the name that is given to Africa. That was the name that Africa was known by before its current inception of Africa. And there is a notable scholar called Dr. Sheikh Diop, who is credited of giving it that name, saying there were Ethiopians, Nubians. So before the Greeks and the Romans, before they came, Africa was actually known as that name, Al-Bekulan. And I thought it was paying homage to that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we actually see a little glimpse of your space here on screen. Thank you, Martina, for sharing. Would you like maybe explain people a little bit what it's all about?
That tree was done, like basically the tree, I sent it to a beautiful and wonderful friend of mine, Anem Hassan, who's a London-based artist, animation artist, and she took a two-dimensional model of some of my artwork that I did. I wanted the tree to represent sort of like a tree of life, the genesis. So she rendered it in 4D animation, but obviously due to the lack of power, or maybe Hub hasn't yet quite caught up to it, Martina did the most she could, which is beautiful, and was able to format it in Hub. So maybe at some point I will post the original 4D animation because it's very, see, I'm wobbling the tape, I'm very sorry. So, and this is just the egg. The egg signifies in my culture in Yoruba, I'm from West Africa and Nigeria, and in the mythology, animals play a pivotal role. So the egg signifies from the hen, you know, because the hen is credited as creating the life, you know, and the egg is sort of the broken egg is sort of the symbol of birth, and we don't believe in death. That doesn't exist in our mythology, so we believe in life and rebirth. Whether you're a Buddhist or, I mean, I think you have all different Western terminology for that, reincarnation, but we believe in life and rebirth. So, and that there, that you see that beautiful 360-degree rotating head bust is called Ife. That's the owner of Ife. Ife is from my country, the Yoruba land. And what happened, a short story to that era, You see, around the 1930s, Nigeria was under colonial invasion then. And what happened was that this was excavated close to a compound where the kingdom of Yoruba was founded, which is my tribe. And there's about 13 to 16 of these beautiful head busts. They're about 5 kilo, and they're made entirely out of bronze cast. And if you can't see it there, but if you Google it, Ife, head of Ife, IFE, you will see in the original casting that there are beautiful striations. Those are thin and detailed lines on the face. And those lines are either scarification or they signify a strong symbolism connected to someone who is of royal heritage. So the crown is sort of like knowledge, signifies someone who has a higher position. And as I said, in quick fun trivia, in Black Panther, in the beginning, remember the museum heist? Remember that scene? Yeah, with Killmonger. Basically, and that's the African section, British Museum. You can see the head bust.
Wow. Nice. Great.
Sorry, you have to stop me. I can go on and on. You have to go. Okay, thank you.
I guess your whole artwork is full of symbolism and metaphors, and so maybe an intro or an invitation to everyone who is listening to us. You can meet Ayo and us after our talks in his Mozilla Hub space.
Yes.
So if there are any questions or you want to just chat, then join us in the Mozilla Hub, and you're gonna find that via, of course, the Vienna Design Week. And I would like to talk a bit about the context of your whole creation. And I obviously know you as a musician, and I have been following you on Instagram during the last years, and I really love what you do there also. So I think you use it in a very clever way. And so how do you feel about digital and new media, though? I think that like maybe we start with Instagram, but then go to the virtual.
Okay.
Do you use this as a platform for your artistic approach, but also maybe for a political message? Or how do you feel about those new media, like Instagram, for example? Does this? How did you start creating your art?
Well, basically, the whole inception of this started with my business partner, music partner, Moritz Pommer, who's a German-based graphic designer and musician. We have a music group called Afro Schnitzel. So the plays on words, for the non-German speaking, Schnitzel is traditionally, sort of German, Bavarian, Austrian kind of dish, or, European in general. Anyway, so the Afro, I'm the African, hint, hint, and he's supposed to be the Schnitzel. So wordplay is something that is very, important to myself and Moritz. So the idea behind that was that Moritz is a graphic designer, and he does most of the artwork for our music. And he was instrumental in encouraging me to so he taught me the basics. Look, what is the story you want to tell? Because every image tells a story. And so I was watching his artwork, and on the Pommer design, that's Pommer, Pommer design, you can see some of his artistic flair. And so he encouraged me, and I've learned over the years that if you're not surrounded by people who encourage you, or then you need to reconsider your circle of friends. So he's one of the people who I've known since my childhood. So there is also a friendship there, as opposed to just a business relationship. So I have best of both worlds ever. So in terms of the technology, yes, so that started. So he's the one who encouraged me. In terms of the political aspect, well, it's like Fela Kuti, who was an West African musician from Nigeria. He said it in a paraphrase, and he said, in terms of the music, he said, Africans, you need to listen to my music as Africans. And I think, I don't know if you remember Soundframe a few years ago when myself and Saeed, when we played. Yes. Anyway, so that was the one on a loop, remember? So Africans. So I think it's the same thing with art. I think the art for me is important because Black people in technology and art have been eradicated. And when you look at the history of art and or even the social technology, the Black inventors, for example, Shirley Jackson, she invented the touch phone. she's a Black inventor, and she's completely taken out of the equation. You have somebody like Louis Latimer, who invented the light bulb, Louis Jalopta, who invented the GIF. So these are all Black inventors. And unfortunately, my homage or my duty and responsibility as an artist of color is to expose their work through the methodology that I use in the approach, and making sure that we, as people of color, are visible, because unfortunately we tend to be visible in a negative light, and that goes into surveillance and CCTV. That was invented by a Black person, by the way. So yeah, so in terms of how the technology, I think they are useful, but the problem with social media platforms like Instagram and also especially TikTok, I call it TikTokticity, because unfortunately, people who are credited in creating influences of dance, music, or culture, they get emulated by their white counterparts, they go viral, and the Black people don't get credit for it. So for me, it's important that we of color have a space for visibility, and that's why I'm grateful for you for having me on this platform, because I think immersive reality should be immersive, but unfortunately it's not the case.
Yeah. And would you reflect on that in your artworks, like very, I don't know, directly, or is it subtle, or how do you create it? Like, what's your process and your aim, kind of?
Very good question, Eva. Well, the process behind it is art for me doesn't have to always be political with a big P, but art should always be, I tend to use this as a tool when I want to say something. So for me personally, as I said, I have a duty and responsibility that if I'm creating or anything, it has to have a purpose, and it has to hopefully influence, hopefully the aim is that it influence other people to think about certain issues. Well, and I have different period, I'm like a because no, but basically, so when I first started using it, I was very salient, very obvious with it, you know, like, you know, the Afrofuturism. But I think I've sort of moved away from that, and as I've evolved and understand my art, so I've gotten lighter with it. So I use pop references, but obviously I can't divert completely from my melanin or my color. So that I think will and always play a role, because as I said, in those spaces, we are not visible. So now I would say it's more subtle, whereas in the earlier stages it was gung-ho and full Monty.
We had this interesting talk. You told me about this artwork, a VR artwork, and I think maybe because Mozilla Hub is this web VR tool, and it brings many new dimensions. Like virtual reality is always told to be the empathy machine, and you can walk in someone else's shoes, you could be someone else. And you told me about this artwork, 1,000 Cuts Journey. Well, maybe to give you a little hint what a 1,000 Cut Journey is. The project was done by Dr. Courtney Cockburn, woman of color, doctor at Columbia University, and she did that together with Professor Jeremy Bailison of the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab. So they did quite a lot of projects together. And in the experience of the 1,000 Cut Journey, you would make the participants experience 3 moments in the life of Michael Sternick. Did you see it, or did you just how did you find out about it, and what's your feeling about it? Like, could you tell us a little bit more about what it's supposed to be?
Right. Well, before all that, just to know, I am not an IT, or I don't have a degree in sort of data analyst or technology, whatever. My approach is always in terms of how are we, what's the representation of ethnic minorities within those spaces. So I came to that through, I mean, if you just keywords, you put in race, technology, and you will get so many hints, so many hits. So I came across that because as I said before, as I'm trying to amalgamate and merge sort of my influences, my cultural influences with this technology. And so I came across that pretty much when I was researching, trying to find sort of points, connecting points between how people of color narrate and tell the story through technology. Yeah. So then this research came up that you just mentioned. And for me, how can I say, I mean, this conversation will have to, we don't have the whole day for that conversation, but in terms of how we came, that's pretty much how, in a nutshell, I came to it. How I feel about it, I think it's pretty much like what's happening right now. Just take, for example, with the whole solidarity movement, with what happened May the 25th with the demise of brother George Floyd. If you take that as an example and how technology completely dictated how we should react and behave, and obviously this was, I told you Eva in a private conversation that this year was the most overwhelming and confusing year for me. And I know it's not just me, because I speak to many of my friends and acquaintances who are of color, because technology just seemed to have, out of nowhere, just bursted and said, okay, make all your screens black, because that's the way you're showing solidarity. Yeah. And people were sharing this graphic image of the life, how life is extinguished from this African-American man. So, and I think this whole idea of empathy is difficult, because when you are sharing this, I'm not saying people shouldn't engage, people of non-color people shouldn't engage in it and share it, but I think you have to be very careful. What is your aim? Do you really need to share it, or how can you be an ally? And I think we get into this sort of voyeuristic porn, excuse my French, where we get high or we get off on this visceral and graphic image of people being decimated, mutilation, and it's only people of color that we get this sense of, it's so wrong. But then we get a moment of sympathy, not empathy, because sympathy is more like, thank God it's not me, like, well, I feel sorry for you. It's a very kind of liberal kind, I feel sorry for you. But the empathy is actually saying, what if it was me? What if I was that person? And in order to have that, I think takes courage, because being courage is like, what would I do if it was me, as opposed to it's shame that it's happening and finger wagging.
Yeah. That's maybe what I heard, maybe actually the goal of that project, at least what Mrs. Coburn says in some interviews. So I found it quite interesting. And she says, like, when the question comes up, if she thinks that it's going to change something, she says, no. Definitely not, because the experience takes you, I don't know, 15 minutes of your life. You're gonna have 3 situations in the life of this of this man, of Michael Sterling. Yeah. Then what would it change? But on the other hand, as far as I know, it's this. It's a whole research project, and people would say, okay. The good thing about it was that it brought me some, I don't know, some other kind of sites, or some, that's true, that could be part of a story. Right. And from that, as a starting point, you would change minds, or at least a little bit. Right. How do you feel about that? I mean, where can you start, or how should you approach that whole, how can you be an ally?
Yeah, well,
I know you don't have to answer that, but
I will refuse to answer this question. Yeah. I refuse.
Like point number one. Yeah.
Well, thank God again through the access of internet. Just thank God for that. That now I think I kind of. It's a tricky one, because I don't think it's my responsible or my role as a person of color to be telling you which places to spaces. But if I want to engage and I want to give you the time, then I would say that, first of all, start with people, listening to people who look like you and sound like you. Because when they tell you, it hits different than if I'm going 100%, wow, and hence the whole empathy sympathy thing. So I think like White Fragility, I think it's a very famous book. I think it's probably hit the roof from Robin DiAngelo, who's a white middle class woman who kind of wrote about the whole of her preconceptions about what she thought she understood. So I suggest that and if you're not really keen on reading, you can also watch it on YouTube, you know. So obviously that's not the answer, but I think starting off with people on liberal platforms where people who talk about those things, I think that's a start. Because as human nature, we connect more engagement with people who look like us, sound like us. So I'll start with that. And I think that can open up a Pandora box. And then you can go further into that. The other thing I would also sort of talk about is that, like, if you're working in those respective fields, like say in the field of technology, also educate yourself about the people who are, as I mentioned some inventor. If you're a technician, IT analyst or data analyst, or you're a programmer, whatever field, especially, I'm focusing on the technological skills because we are talking about immersive reality. Find out, do you any Black coders, Black women coders or programmers? If not, your job is to educate yourself, because you will find out that actually you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, I mean, just last year, just as a side note, if you take last year, right now, the 5 biggest tech companies were sued by the Democratic Republic of Congo because they were extracting all those resources that we use in our phone and in our computer system. So those things impact us on a major scale, you know. So I think, as I said, to loop it, to sort of circulate and close the circle, start with people around you who are engaged in that, who look and sound like you. As I said, we don't have the whole day to go into it. I mean, I don't want to go listen. It's, you know.
No, and I think that that's the one thing, and then to have this a wrapped up kind of come back to the art. And I really think that art is a very good place to be, and a very good, I don't know, atmosphere to also express yourself and make people be engaged and on a very different level, I guess.
Right. I mean, and also but one thing, because we're talking about American thing, but also here, I think one encouraging thing that I'm beginning to see that is developing is this hate online, net. Have you heard about it? So I think it's becoming more and more of a conversation because just on a quick note, Zara, which not the brand, not the clothing brand, Zara is an anti-racist organization platform based in Austria. Every year they do an annual report of racism online, defamation speech, and they have them in different sections. So you have the police institution, which is a separate entity. Then you have social media, and then you have online. And from 2008 till now, when you look at the report, 1 out of 2 hate and racism or racist incitements take place online. This is Austria, a country of 8 million people. So I'm very encouraged by these new law enforcements that hopefully will come into practice. And I know France and Germany are already doing that, and Austria might be the 3rd country to jump on board. So that's why you guys are also revolutionary, because you are actually in the middle of it, you know, so you can take credit for that.
No, but we really definitely have to also continue our conversation.
Absolutely.
And stay in touch, and
absolutely.
also in terms of the virtual and all those things. And come back today if you want to talk with Ayo and us, and meet us again then in around an hour in the virtual space in our Mozilla Hub exhibition and in Ayo's artwork.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we leave the stage for Martina and Malizin. Thank you, Ayo.
Sure.
Hello again.
Hi.
Hi. So just give me a second to...
Yes. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Finally.
First time seeing us face to face.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, amazing talk, Ayo. So we go now with our interview. Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm gonna just move a bit because I'm on the corner here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just introduce you to our audience first, and then I'm gonna kind of guide you all through this amazing work that Malitzin created for us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Malitzin Cortez, she's an artist based in Mexico City. And she's a digital artist as well as architect, musician, programmer, and also teacher at the Digital Media and Technology and the STEAM Lab of the Centro.
Yes.
Yeah, for our exhibition at the Design Week Virtual Festival headquarters, Malitzin create a new version, or like a version for the exhibition of her work Layering Corpus, which is an immersive multi-channel virtual reality piece created in Mozilla Hubs. And I really enjoy this piece immensely. I really like how you explore impossible architecture. And oh, sorry, I was shaking the table.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah, how you explore impossible architecture and also sound stimulation with your work, and somehow you manage to use the virtual and all the shapes that you have in the virtual to go beyond form and beyond materiality.
Yes.
Also, what is very particular of your piece is that the soundscape that you create, it's something you have to engage by moving. So the navigation within the space is very important. And by walking, by navigating the space, you get to know the composition piece by piece, space by space. So for you, like exploration and the moving and the transiting of the digital body is extremely important. So my first question to you would be if you can talk to us about your work, Layering Corpus, maybe while showing it here in Zoom. And yeah, how did you create the piece and why did you choose Mozilla Hubs as a platform for it in the first place?
Okay, first, thank you very much for inviting me to this really amazing exhibition. I'm a biggest fan of your work also. Yes, I think I saw your work in the Casa del Artista.
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect.
It's really nice to have to not be the one interviewed for once.
Sorry.
I feel much more relaxed actually.
Okay, but maybe I want to share my screen with you. Let me share also the audio. Okay, we are here. And this is Layering Corpus, and what my piece is a kind of a speculative architecture for virtual reality and web. And it's a kind of multisensory virtual pavilion or something like that. It's inspired by inflatable architectures, the digital body, and the immersive collective experiences. Is here. This is the interior of this impossible structure, and I decided do my piece in Mozilla because I discovered Mozilla Hubs a year ago, since I was starting to make pieces in virtual reality and 360 video in Unity, and I was looking for options on the web to make immersive experiences. But when I really started to know the proposal and the Mozilla Hubs technology, in fact, it was to find spaces to hold concerts and artistic talks, and also exhibitions for the live coding community here in Mexico. We were preparing a concert this year in a very popular abandoned factory in Mexico City, but this pandemic situation stopped everything. All these events were canceled, and I was it's for that, and I decided to build this space for our community of artists without another interesting, just share musical proposals and had fun. And let me share the Fabrica project. It's other project. It's not layering corpus, but it's the first approach with Mozilla. Let me show Fabrica VR is here.
So this was a space for music, so for music performances and getting together that
Yes.
you designed, you created, and you also curated, right?
Yes. It's a space for the world community of live coding creators, I guess. This is our own venue, our own Fabrica, and we streaming concerts and workshops, also artistic talks and all with this imaginary common in electronic music, no? The abandoned building, the factory for raves and crazy performance. And that was my first approach. And I began to model and also to know how to spatialize audio within Mozilla. And from that, I began to fantasize about making a piece that involves using that quality with the sound, this immersive sound, in conjunction with all these ideas of speculative architecture that I have been investigating and reflecting on my own work. Okay, this is on Fabrica, but I come back in layering corpus.
Yeah, yes, does allow to be in two spaces at once.
yes, in 4 or 5 spaces, so 4 or 5 parties in the same time, I think.
So you went from designing the Fabrica VR to layering corpus. So that was your second space you created in Hubs. I found it really interesting to see like the two different spaces, like one being extremely somehow trying to recall the reality and having this, as you call it, speculative architecture and impossible architecture. I found really nice how this particular piece feels so bodily. So it feels like you're inside the stomach of a live entity somehow. And yeah, and of course the sound actually we should hear because it is about the sound as well. So I'm gonna shut.
No, please continue. It's my error, sorry.
Okay, then I would just maybe ask you my second question, because you already say that this is a multisensory piece. And I also found it somehow perceivable because it has, again, this fleshy, this meaty, this bodily feeling, especially in the first place. So what we're seeing now is the entrance of, or like the first space of the architecture. And I personally am very interested in this concept of synthetic corporeality, so a virtual reality that you can physically feel in the physical reality. So I wanted to ask, what drove you into deciding certain shapes and certain textures, and if you think this concept of virtual of synthetic corporeality can be applied to architecture, because I feel I always look at a project that have to do with like humanoid or avatars, and that's of course working. And I was very surprised to see how the same concept, for me at least, worked with an architectural building in your project. So I wanted to know, how do you feel about it? And how did you choose the shapes and how did you choose the textures for the different spaces?
You are absolutely right when you describe it as a living entity, because I want to create exactly that with different environments and sensations within this very elastic and textured environment. I was interested not only in creating with the different environments in music. I decided to adopt perhaps for this moment in the humanity, the old expressions of the pavilion as in the modern time, like Philips pavilion. Let me show some references. Maybe something like that in this moment of the architecture, no? With this, I'm sorry. Okay, with this old expression, like this pavilion, with these transdisciplinary works, no, with musicians and between architects, no. In this case, is a work between Le Corbusier and Yanis Xenakis, trying to make this very experimental and mathematical architecture, and where the sound and visuals, the space, the architecture scale transforms the experience into something multisensory. For me, has been so interesting, and also like a live coder, one of my principal interests about the mathematics and generative music have so much sense when I trying to create this impossible architecture and this sorry, I lost the word. This road through the space, no? Trying to explore these concepts within a virtual space with a digital body, absolutely. But my first question was whether was possible to experience this type of sensations through the virtuality and much more with the screen, because it's so different of the real presence, no? But I think the body is super important for make this possible, because you perceive the scale, you perceive the distance in the sound, and it's for that I do this kind of architecture, so inspired also in this moment in the architecture with inflatable utopias spaces.
It's really interesting because I come from a total art background, so I really know almost anything about architecture, and this is, I can see now the references. This is very interesting. Maybe this brings me to my next question to you is, at least from my feeling, in your space, the shapes, the sounds, the materials that you use for texturizing, they all seems to kind of go together, but also being equally important. And I wanted to check if that's true. So if it's for you, all of those elements are at the same level of importance. At the same time, you have a very specific sound identity in the space. You have a specific shape identity. So each space has its own identity and changes between one part of the space to the next. So I wanted to know if you have any particular aspect that you highlight when you created a space, and if yes, which one? And also, what is exactly your process? Where do you start first? Because you're artist, architecture, you're coming from architecture, you're a musician. So what do you create first? Do you start from the shape or the sound? And how do you bring all of this together?
I guess I have first a concept, I think, this concept for the inflatable architectures, but I don't know, maybe it's like a parallel process with the sound and the space for me, because I imagine the feeling inside. I already had an idea to make this type of geometry. Imagine as a big plastic bubble with toroids that could generate tunnels. I had no intention for make orthogonal walls in this project. Imagine, for example, the first space and the music came to me in some way. I don't know why. I wanted to sound like a cave or like a epithelial, like a inside of a body, no, something like that. and after that, and I imagine another kind of synthetic plastic textures, and after something like a stomach, where we could see through of a lattice, that outside there was this incredible sky and landscape. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the most part in the piece is like a skin, or like a stomach or something like that. I don't know. But after this moment in the piece, I start to modeling, but also compose the music in parallel.
Okay.
For me, it's something like that. And after I imagine this plastic and synthetic texture, and I imagine what sounds sounds so much textured, but in this space. But also, this is the other part. Let me show you. Let me show a little bit the sound. Maybe you can tell me if you can listen. Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's a little bit textured, I guess. After, it's difficult also in Mozilla trying to make these complex textures, because you know, in Mozilla we have a lot of possibilities, but also a lot of ¿cómo decirlo? A lot of sorry. Limits, yes. Yes, limits, because you need low poly models, you need textures no much complex.
But I think you really managed to have a good combination, like using the limitation of Mozilla Hubs with the result. While watching your tour now, came to my mind, like you say that you're very interested in like the narrative system, but at the same time in this space you created a sort of story, like from the start to the end. So I was wondering if you could just say how do you cope with narrative in a space like Mozilla Hubs, in which anybody can enter at whatever times, being alone or with others. They can fly or not fly. So how did you cope with this story making in a virtual space, in a social virtual space?
Okay, for me in this piece, it's important walk, because when you fly in Mozilla Hubs, you can throw the walls, you can do anything you want, and that it's okay, that it's cool. But I want to force to the users to make a road, make a road specifically for try to have a narrative. Starts in this part of the piece, and after pass these textures, and after pass this kind of medulla or celosia, and after finish this experience in a very dark place. And it's for me important the people can walk for feel the scale and feel the ground. I think flying, it's okay. I love flying in these metaverse spaces, absolutely. But I think walk works better in this experience.
And maybe one last question on my side would be, because now you just mentioned about like these kind of limitations that you would appreciate the user to have while exploring your work. So yeah, Mozilla Hubs, we were saying also at the very beginning, it's this great social virtual space where you could meet with people, you can have parties, and you can experience art, and you can chat and whatnot. and I wanted to know, like, how do you see this? Like, how important was for you to be in a social VR space for your project? And do you prefer the audience to be coming in groups and being together, experiencing the space, or is it more a personal and intimate exploration that the user should do, and then maybe at the end meet the people, meet the friends, meet the others? I just wanted to check a bit, your use of Mozilla Hubs, because this also feels very much, this could really be working also as a single user experience. But you decided to have it in Mozilla Hubs, and I wonder, how do you feel about having, I don't know, 20 people coming together in the space?
Okay, I completely agree with you. The social part of Mozilla, it's precisely what makes it so special and immersive experience. No, it's so important, the social part inside Mozilla. I think that in particular this piece is to leave it like any tour or landscape or a road in an art gallery. It's fun to go with other people, I think. And share what is your first thing, no? How to say, this is weird, or I love this, or I can fly, or something with other people, no? Share opinions and share sensations. It's also very nice to be alone in this great structure and take your time to explore it, no? Take your time for mix the sounds with your positions, you know? The importance of the body prevails throughout the piece. Even the cutest thing happened. Some people have dates in the room. Yes, so cute. Yes, absolutely. Let me show you one selfie. let me show you. But it's for see each other with their crushes, like going to any artistic appointment or going to an exhibition, you know. I think also the selfies are also important. They have become part of our memory, and it's a way of documenting our life and the places we pass through. It's a way to say, I'm here, no, or I was here in this space or in this metaverse. I really appreciate the social values inside the experiences, no. Let me search the photographies. Are really cute.
Yeah, I think it's also good, how to say, like a good ending to just show this, I was here. And meanwhile you search, I want to just thank you very much for your time and your tour in Layering Corpus. I'm sure we will see more of your work, hopefully Mozilla Hubs in the future. And again, if I don't know, are you gonna be around in Mozilla Hubs later? Maybe it would be nice, people can join and that's can join and chat with you.
No, this photo is amazing.
That's very sweet.
Yes, really sweet. I'm working in this moment. I'm working in another projects. I think more institutionals with Mozilla, because everyone in this moment wants have one space for something, no, for concerts, for exhibition, for talks. And in another hand, a few months ago, I participated in a workshop with a Maze Festival in Berlin with artists and developers, and we were trying to learn how to use an amazing tool to make music within virtual reality. And this application, it's called Patch XR. Do you know it?
Yeah.
Or,
I don't use it, but I heard it. I'm not really good in music. I love music. I cannot make music.
let me show you one little draft.
Just once, because we have a bit of a tight schedule, so I'm afraid maybe we can do like this. Like if you're around in Mozilla Hubs, people that are interested can kind of join you in your space, and maybe that we can bring the chat there after.
Yes,
after that would be fine with you. That would be amazing.
yes.
So
Also,
for everyone watching, you just go to our exhibition space and then jump, of course, to Ayo space and to Malizin, and you will find them there and you can chat. Malizin, thank you once again.
Thank you, Martina.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
I give the word now to Wilhelm. So I'm gonna bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Hello. Are the blobs there ready? Oh yeah. Hey.
Hey.
Hello. Hey. Actually, it's quite nice. Like now we move totally into the architecture field, and I guess your stuff actually, the outer shape reminded me a bit of some of your works. So I don't know. Should we start with your space, or should I do a short introduction? I had brought mainly works in digital architecture. Can I say only works in digital architecture, or
No,
mainly? Mainly, okay. So they work mainly with digital tools and create or test a lot of spatial aesthetic stuff online, or at least that's how it's represented to the broader audience, I would say. I guess you started a lot on Instagram was your main platform at the beginning, or when you started out, and you did there like daily architectural projects, or mostly daily stuff there to test all those different shapes and programs and stuff like that. And then you somehow evolved to augmented reality and stuff like that, or is that correct somehow? Still
yeah.
correct? Yeah. I think I will just, I don't know, are you going to stream your space or the space for, I mean, that's also why I invited you, like, because I thought you were the first that I thought of when I got asked to curate this, because yeah, we know each other, and then you're the go-to guys when it comes to digital stuff, I would say. But what I like about your work is that it somehow always has this relation to something in real, or like also with, or a lot of your Instagram posts or your project that you post on Instagram is, I think, related to text, or has always a text from a philosopher or writer, or at least a quote that somehow was already in the real world, or in the real world. And also now with your space, you have this relation to Teatro Olimpico, which I guess you can say a bit more about it and maybe show the space for those who haven't visited it in the virtual festival headquarters.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we can show, before we jump into the slides, I think Sasha and Sean can show a few slides which are about the space, and maybe it's like easier somehow than our space just initially to.
Maybe a short introduction about our work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I didn't cover it correctly.
No, you did, but like, yeah, we can jump to this.
Top it up.
Yeah, we are three of us that are doing this, and as you rightly pointed out, this really started for us on social media, this project. So we started designing this single object every day and pairing that with some theoretical and conceptual text that kind of underlined qualities of the object or our design process. And so that grew into 100 daily posts, and we started to get a lot of really interesting engagement. So we started engaging with philosophers and notable architects or engineers. And so we continued this tradition, and we posted every day for 1,000 days, which led to us having a lot of work. to show. And so we started then, we kind of had these whole virtual worlds populated by these objects. And the objects were kind of evolving. So sometimes when we started, they were on their own, but we continued to add constraints. So like people for scale or how the objects met the ground. And I think this is particularly important because when we start to show our space, these are all the kind of things that we start to think about in a virtual space, like the Mozilla Hub space that we designed. How these objects sit in relationship to each other, to the user, and to the ground. So yeah, kind of continuing on from this, then we moved a bit more to augmented reality, which is what you pointed out there. And for us, I think, you know, we're going to mostly focus on the VR space that we made here. But I think for us, there's always this connection between what we put into virtual reality and what's in the physical world. So in the case of augmented reality, that's tying it to physical landmarks like buildings or graffiti, or letting it kind of wander around aimlessly. But in the case of our Mozilla Hub space, we took a particular architectural precedent from Palladio, this Teatro Olimpico, and we tried to take the architectural concepts there and then embed it into the space. So we've really looked at a lot of different things here. So everything from how does architecture affect our face? How does it affect walls? How does it affect architecture models? And try to experiment with all of these different ideas. And that's a little bit what we put into then rhubarb and custard. So yeah, maybe Sean or Sasha wants to speak a bit more about the actual space itself.
Yeah. Are you? Okay.
So when we were asked to design a space for Vienna Design Week, we thought it was a great opportunity for us to experiment and kind of put our knowledge into an actual space which would get used by people as an exhibition space. And yes, we thought it was a great opportunity to kind of put something fun into it. And like, as you can say from the name itself, as rhubarb and custard, it's a kind of playful name, which has kind of connections with a cartoon from the 80s or a sweetie. So it's nothing in particular. And still you get this kind of association with something pink and sweet as our space.
Yeah. And maybe just to go back to the title again, it's one of those things that for us, we're doing it quite regularly, where there's these kind of architectural cues that you need to follow a certain procedure, process. Architecture is supposed to be designed in a certain way. Architectural models are supposed to be white, they're super clean. All of these kind of things that become, like, I guess, the norm. And I think for us, we think it's somewhat kind of ridiculous that the architect can't embrace all of these other kind of, I guess, flavors that are possible in the world, especially within the world of digital architecture or digital spaces, that we can totally take advantage of materials and color and textures and things like this, things that are become kind of taboo, I would say, for the traditional architect. But then on the flip side of this, we are directly looking at Palladio here, or Scamozzi, where the set design is so integral to the architectural project, where the single point perspective kind of frames the scene almost to appear as if it's much larger than it is. And it's one of these things that is so, I guess, temporal, but also fixed in place, where this set design has been there for years now. Like, it's something super exciting for us, but also highly classical to an extent, but incredibly exciting in terms of how you take this idea and transfer it over to the digital space and start to think not so much in purely geometry and how you can design a set, but rather how you might take geometry, i.e. like a doorway or a gateway, and project that geometry onto flat or low resolution surfaces.
And maybe it's also worth noting with the reference that you kind of get multiple narratives from this concept. And so when Wilhelm asked us to design the space, we were tasked with designing the cinema space. And so we thought it was a really fitting idea to look back to this idea of multiple simultaneous narratives based around perception or perspective and movement. So that's kind of where we took this. And then, yeah, as Sean and Sasha are going to go on to show now, tried to consider how that would manifest itself within this kind of new digital and virtual space.
Like later on, when we go through the space, you will actually see like more in detail what it is. But right now we go in kind of conceptual geometry and what it consists of. So like Sean mentioned, it will do a lot with perspective and how you approach space and details. And yeah, you will see these kind of abstract doorways consisting from multiple objects. You will recognize some sort of symmetry and
I think one thing to take from the doorways as well, like they're incredibly like highly detailed, from just the layering of primitive forms, the actual depth of each doorway. And it's something that's interesting because for us, like we know we've worked with like WebXR quite a bit, and we know that there's limitations, like direct limitations in terms of like how high our textures can be, or how heavy, sorry, our textures can be, like how heavy our geometries can be. So we were looking for a way to bring something super high resolution in terms of polygon count and complexity, and make it super simple. So we took these really high resolution 3D geometries that we've designed here through, like Sasha said, the symmetry and using these primitive forms and multiple color palettes, but then actually projected them throughout the space in a similar notion to the Teatro Olimpico, where instead of having one, like I guess there, like Ben said, there's multiple kind of cinematic experiences depending on where you sit in that one theater. But for us, obviously this pathway kind of links all of these kind of doorways and projected objects in the space, where some of them appear as they should, the way that you're seeing them here in their like kind of purest sense, and then others are distorted or kind of glitched into place depending on the way that they're projected.
And like previous artists already mentioned how Mozilla Hubs has some limitations, and it's a great example of how architects actually work. We work with constraints in the first place, and in this situation, this occasion, we actually the project emerged from the limitation and concept at the same time. So yeah, so you have the opportunity to render in a high resolution textures, which it's allowed. So that's where we're taking the most kind of off.
And I think it's super cool to see here, like I guess the comparison, but also like the kind of pure difference between the details that you can see that are completely three-dimensional, and then within the space where these doorways become like very simple in the sense that there's some that are just extrusions, and then it's the texture that's becomes important. And in some of the ways we're quite playful in the way that we add like physical depth or actual geometric depth to it. So some of the doorways have extrusions in slightly the wrong places, so they don't fit, and like the shadows are incorrect because they're rendered textures that have their own kind of, they're like their own object in themselves, where they inherit I guess a different sun setup or a different sun system in which the digital space in Mozilla Hubs has as well. So then we're playing with these multiple layerings of digital spaces interacting and overlapping.
Maybe another one small interesting thing about the design itself is that, as you can see, most of the geometries are made of primitives, but just because they're arranged in this kind of symmetry and kind of mirrored allocations, it does create the visual of like a kind of classical architecture, which I think was interesting. These are some snapshots from the space, which we will get in more detail.
Yeah, you want me to jump into the space then?
Yeah, if you've got it open.
Yeah, so I think you guys have to stop sharing your screen and then.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think maybe, Willem, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So maybe I'll just kind of cruise around the space, but if we want to talk about different aspects, I don't think we haven't kind of curated a tour. Maybe the only thing to mention is that if you come to visit the space, there is this idea of spatial sequencing that we've put into this. So there is a particular path a little bit curated for you so that you will experience different moments where this volume is either condensed, so a three-dimensional volume is compressed into a two-dimensional space, or vice versa, where a two-dimensional perspective and scene is spread out across multiple objects. So I'll just kind of walk through that space, but we can talk about kind of anything that that's of interest.
I think one of the kind of fun things as well about this space, like now that you kind of know that there is these kind of, I guess, optical illusions to an extent that you can piece together if you're standing in quite a specific point. It's kind of nice to try and, I guess, walk around and try and find like which parts of the puzzle piece together, because some of them don't. So that's kind of a, I guess, an Easter egg to an extent, because you're looking for a piece that connects with it, but it doesn't connect purely. But then there's others that are quite easy to see, and some that are a lot more difficult. So it's kind of nice to see these kind of correlations between the texturing and how they start to emphasize the space. And also each one of these kind of, we're calling them gateways or doorways, kind of emphasize a space in front that hosts one of many of the films that float around the space, whether it's in a 360 spherical film or a flat two-dimensional film. Because I guess one of the things that we've been investigating for quite a while as well is this kind of the way that we interact with digital media, and the way that, especially since like our lockdowns or our quarantines, everybody has been kind of interacting with, like we are right now, Zoom or through streaming and things like this, which are purely flat interactions. But I think one of the things you guys mentioned quite nicely at the beginning is how great Mozilla Hubs is as a way to get people into a space. And like you can, one of the things that we always spoke about, we spoke quite with Space Popular about this as well, how nice it is of having like spatial audio. So while you're standing beside someone, you're not getting the full volume of their voice, but you actually hear it similar to the way that you would hear someone in a room where they're kind of off to the left or they're off to the right, they're in front of you, behind you. And that really kind of ties the space together a lot more in terms of the way that we are interacting with in XR.
Yeah, I think that was also when when it was your book launch, that was actually the first hubs I joined where there were more people, and it was an interesting experience, but then it was also super hard to hear because like everybody was doing this hearts and like the clapping emojis, and
people
at some point like and I guess then at some point also the connection was pretty bad and you were lost and stuff. So but that's what I really like about it, and that you, in a way, it's like such a new experience. Back then it was for me also a new experience when I joined your book launch, but otherwise it wouldn't have been possible. I guess it was also first you wanted to release it actually in in reality, and then you had to switch to this to do the virtual release in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a weird thing because like I think everybody has to pivot now because obviously the coronavirus has kind of caused us not like being able to be there physical. So we're trying to find the most exciting ways to possibly do these kind of meetups or conversations that we can have. because I think everybody now it's strange because the WebXR kind of field of like Mozilla Hubs is still super new, even though now everybody is starting to like, okay, how can we talk online? How can we meet on Skype or Zoom or whatever? And everybody's first thinking is Zoom or Skype, but then like it's actually really quite accessible to get into to Mozilla Hubs and actually speak to someone, get into the space, kind of feel a bit more, I guess, present or involved in the space as well, which I think is super important. And I think it's going to become way more important as time goes on in the way that we interact with people digitally as well.
Yeah, you have to be active in a way, and like you cannot just like with a Zoom call, you can do whatever on the side, but if someone moves and
you see the
here and you cannot find them anywhere, it's a totally different thing. And it's also like with spaces like yours, for example, I think with when we had the tour, like some people immediately walked away and then they couldn't hear it, and like so that's also quite interesting. But maybe I thought about some questions, because I actually also mentioned it with the wide models like that we have in real architecture. I call it real architecture, because I think that's also a big criticism about not only your work, but like all these digital formats that younger architects, or let's call it now the newer generation in a way. I mean, you guys are still a bit younger than I am, or at least John and Sasha, I think. But so I think it's like quite interesting, because we had, when there was this real life talk and people ask you like, okay, you are now super young, so this doesn't have any relevance in architecture. It's cool that you do it now, but when you finish studying, like you won't have a job in a way. Like that's nothing you can do afterwards. It's just pure fun and pure playing around. But that's also nowadays, it's probably got even more relevant. Like you're super native to like creating virtual spaces in a way, and like this space we are in right now, and like it's something that can stick to, let's say, physical boundaries, but it doesn't have to. And that's what your whole work is about in a way, like exploring these new ways of doing space, let's call it like this, or object. So
yeah, definitely. Like I think we've all had individual critiques from other architects or colleagues that kind of don't see the work as serious, or us taking it as serious as the white cube, this kind of modernist idea, I guess. And even the architects that we've been interacting with that are coming from like the deconstructivist era as well, that have kind of very negative opinions because they thought they were still really hardcore architects. And I think some of the things that we quite enjoy doing is actually breaking those boundaries, the things that are like I said earlier, are kind of taboo. Like I think it was Wolf Pricks once had said that architectural models must be white, and they had to be like designed in a specific way. And for us, it's kind of ridiculous, because it doesn't make it any less architectural if it embodies new ideas of space, or tries to explore new ideas of space, but just because it's not the kind of tried and tested notion.
I think also, I think also that, you know, there's this idea that we're trying to engage with some of the technology that's really influencing our society as a whole, and that like whether it's real architecture, I think usually we would call it more like traditional architecture, doesn't really engage with some of this technology as much, like social media or augmented reality. And I think for us, what we see is maybe the flipped perspective, that it's a bit dangerous for us not to engage with this, because we fundamentally believe something like augmented reality and virtual reality are going to be part of the future of how people live. And that's kind of evident, maybe not necessarily in architecture, but in all of the other aspects of our society. And so if architects don't engage with this, then what's going to happen is someone else is going to be the ones that are designing this space. So you know, we typically would make the argument that when you want to do an augmented extension to a physical structure, or you want to design a virtual space like this, what's important is to consider certain spatial and formal, aesthetic, conceptual relationships, whatever your architectural focus is, but essentially what we as architects have been trained to do. Because if we don't, then what's going to happen is someone like an advertisement company is going to be the one that's put in charge of it, or somebody that has this technology or that is technologically savvy with this, but has no formal or spatial understanding. And I think we see that as kind of a potential big downfall, that if architects aren't dealing with this kind of virtual and augmented space, then the result is going to be a bunch of ads and nothing experimental or even kind of spatially interesting.
I guess also to add on to that, like we've spoken quite a lot about like building like a more resilient architect to an extent, where like if we don't engage with this, then architecture itself it's gonna kind of dwindle away into someone else's field. Like we already see it today with things like there's specific facade designers that an architect doesn't have to do that anymore. There's layouts that contractors can do themselves. Like kind of the architect's role is already being kind of picked away at, and has been for centuries, I guess. But there's the opportunity to engage with new technologies and new ways of thinking that can really like reinvigorate the position of the architect as well, and actually make the architect seem, or not even seem, make the architect important once again within the way that we curate culture or we're affecting space. And I think that's, for us, like really interesting, the way that we can actually kind of propel the discourse a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think it's super relevant, and I guess it's anyway gotten much more relevant now, like with the I don't want to have the whole discussion about the coronavirus, but
yeah, but
it somehow gives more relevance to this virtual or like digital world. And I often have the feeling that let's call it traditional architects, you said before, they I think it's not only like that they don't want this. I think they somehow are afraid of that's going to be something that might be relevant in the future. So
yeah,
we are not able to do that, and or some probably aren't, but we never thought about that, and now it's becoming such a big part of our life. Like the whole society is now so involved in social media, social engagement through the internet. Like public spaces somehow become less relevant than, for example, like in digital or in virtual public space, so to say, and that's exactly where you engage. So,
but you even think, I mean, it's a sort of silly example, but like how most people experience architecture now, you see more architecture on an Instagram feed than you do in real life, which didn't used to be the case, of course, but that's the way the world is now. And so I think what we're trying to do is just engage with what the world is and how it's and where it's going, you know. So I think we're not, you know, maybe some people want to fight that trend and think that that's not going to be the way things are moving forward in the future. But for us, it doesn't make sense to fight it, because it seems like a losing battle. And it seems like, you know, architecture has all of these amazing digital qualities to offer. So it would be a shame to ignore that and try and pretend like it doesn't exist.
I think also just to think of the technology in like in very plain, simple terms, it's purely spatial. Like virtual space, it's all about the space. It's about putting someone in somewhere else. Or if it's augmented reality, we're talking about putting something into the space or extending the space or changing the space. And they're like really architectural ideas, like on a very simple level. So I think to reject them, and we've had quite a lot of older architects, let's say, or traditional architects kind of put them aside and say, oh, they're only media, or it's just media. And I think it's somewhat kind of negative to the fact that it is so spatial, and it's definitely within in our opinion, within the architect's realm. And I think it's kind of negative to just say that it's just media, both for people working within new media themselves, and also for architects that are wanting to use these new modes of technology or new modes of representation.
And the fun fact is that most architecture mainly stays digital anyway. So
Yeah.
like what is their stuff, or what is the stuff that they do? Like, I mean, for example, in competition, like a small percentage of what is created actually gets out of the, as in now, cloud or the servers of the offices. So I think it's like just this shifting of you at least presented to the world, and it's fun to look at. It's nice to look at it.
Yeah.
It's fun to do, probably more fun to do, or it is more fun to do than just draw like a detail or something. It's just like trying new stuff and not being in a way bound by whatever norms or stuff there are out there. But then we of course have other limitations, like we mentioned before, like in Mozilla Hubs and also in other digital or in other programs and stuff. So yeah.
I think those are interesting though, because I think to be completely aware of those things, like actually is a step forward. So even though there is some limitations, from the other side, you can say like, if we are developing our own tools as well to make these types of experiences, or to design a specific type of architecture, or for like designing a mode in which we can design architecture for like whether it's a game or some sort of interaction with machine learning, then it's definitely super interesting that the architect starts to learn how to make these tools and understand them even more so than just knowing how to use them to exploit like a presentation. For us anyway, I think that's really important, because we're always trying to think of the ways that we can make either new apps, or thinking of new tools that we can use to create new geometry or new types of spaces, because I think all of this stuff, all this technology is kind of at your fingertips if you look around for it, and there's things out there that, I guess, not to sound like kind of cliche, but like haven't been explored yet. Like it's possible that there's quite a lot of new things to investigate. So I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours or stuff, but I think like we should, or we maybe, I don't know if they're actually, if the others are coming back and we have a discussion in general, but
they're coming.
They are coming. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, first I want to say thanks to you guys, and it was a lovely experience in your space, and I urge everybody who's watching and hasn't been to the spaces, check them out and experience it for yourself, and maybe you bump into someone around there, which is even more fun when you're just walking around on your own. Yeah, so thanks iHeartBlog, Sasha, Sean, and Ben.
Thanks for inviting us. We're super pumped to be part of this event. So yeah, cheers.
Great, thank you. So I don't know, Gabriel, or how are we continuing? Are we continuing? Or
just as you said, I could talk to you guys forever, and I think there were so many topics raised about, you know, the politics, the aesthetics, the functionalities of virtual spaces, and how artists, designers, and architects even deal with those. I would love to, like, you know, it's 8 now, and I think they're going to kick us out of our festival headquarters soon, so I won't be able to chat with you forever. But I think, you know, it's already been mentioned that some of you are going to hang out in the hubs, and I think that's a great idea, to use the spaces that all of you have created to continue the discussion. And I also hope that we can continue this discussion and similar discussions at Vienna Design Week this year and in the following years, of course, as well. And I hope we get the chance to work with you and with other people again and again, and further deepen this thing that we've been started.
Cool.
Does anyone else of you want to kind of have a finishing statement as well, or?
Well, thank you, Gabriel, also for having us, and thanks Vienna Design Week. It's really, I think synergy is really a very important thing, and that's what you create, and bringing people together. So thanks for that, and thanks for having us, and thank you everyone. Also Wilhelm for the brilliant collaboration, Ayo as an artist, Angie behind the scenes, Martina of course, and Lenny.
Yeah, we have.
And,
we have a mascot in the space.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you guys, and it was a pleasure. Everybody who was involved, like also everybody who did spaces for me, and everybody who did spaces for you. It's really a nice. It's a nice opportunity, and I learned a lot out of it, and
Same.
So
it's nice.
Angie.
Let's maybe finish with an invitation to everyone who's listening and to the stream or here or anywhere, to come and visit the virtual festival headquarters, to check out the spaces that have been created and that are linked to our main hub, but also to come and visit us in the physical festival headquarters if you happen to be close by, and to just check out all the artists, designers and architects who are involved, and keep on following their work and supporting their work. And have a nice evening, everyone.
And you can actually join the virtual headquarters with VR goggles in the physical headquarters. So maybe that's also another point that should be added.
Having a bit of unpaid sales representation for here in the
Cool.
All right.
So
have a nice evening in the physical reality, and we meet in the virtual.
Yes.
See you all soon.
See you. Bye bye. Thanks.